Well, hello, everyone. Ni hao. My name is Louis Zacharilla. I'm with the Intelligent Community Forum. I'm one of the founders, and I'm delighted that today we are starting a series of virtual roundtables called this Virtual Roundtable Smart City Edition with the title, How Does Taiwan Do It? And over the next few sessions, we're going to try to understand how Taiwan performs at such a high level when it comes to smart and intelligent communities. As you know, Taiwan has developed many intelligent communities, I believe 15 at this point. And so what we're going to do through our ICF Taiwan organization, through ITRI, and through some of our most prominent intelligent communities is try to explore what it really takes to become like Taiwan and to become like some of the intelligent communities that you'll meet as part of this series. So we're really going to have conversations that go a little bit deeper into this issue so that if you're watching and your community seeks to become like Taiwan or like Dublin, Ohio, or like some of the other great cities, you can go on the path and begin to do that. Before I start our conversation this evening, what I'd like to do is turn it over to my friend, Maggie Chow. Maggie is the manager of the Smart City Development Project Office, which is delegated by the Industrial Development Bureau and the Ministry of Economic Affairs, Taiwan. This is our ICF Taiwan organization. And what Maggie is going to do for the next 5 minutes or so is give us sort of an introduction to set up the idea of the smart city and to take a look at some of the innovations in Taiwan so that you can become familiar with what is going on there in the area, specifically of ICT. So Maggie, I now turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you, Lou. Hello, everyone. This is Maggie Zhao. Really glad that we can work with ICF to organize this How Does Taiwan Do It series webinar. And as the first webinar, I'm glad that I would like to give you a short introduction about our smart city project in Taiwan. Taiwan is very good at the hardware manufacturing. So like the notebook, the tablet, just name it, we are the world #1 provider. And we are also good at the software part. So for the software part, we are talking about the surface penetration rate and the internet usage rate, which means our citizens are able to, also willing to use the internet service. And with this advantage, with the advantage of both hardware and the software. So it gives us our industry a very good way to develop smart city solutions to enhance our citizens' life. And I think we did a very good job at ICF, for example, that we work with ICF and try to have, at least now, 15 of 22 cities in Taiwan have been nominated as the intelligent community, especially Taoyuan, Taichung, and Taipei are selected as the top 1 intelligent community of that year. And Taiwan has been devoted to smart city development for many years. It's a long journey for us. And our government also have many policy and many projects to support it for the e-Taiwan and Taiwan. And now we have 3-year smart city projects in Taiwan. And we call it a public-private and partnership co-creation model. And this is our smart city project framework. That as a central government, that we work with the local government to collect their requests. And at the same time, we also try to address their industrial needs. So we collect all the requests and all the topics, and we issue the RFP. And then we encourage the industry to submit their proposal. And then we select a better proposal and we fund them. And at the same time, we also deploy the open API interface standards and other digital frameworks for the service. So for O&O, that we do the international expansion because we not just want to do it in Taiwan, we also want to work with the other community to share our experience. And this is a 3-year project, and now we are at the 3 years now. And as of now, we already have 223 projects and have almost 300 enterprises get involved. And there are even including 70 startups. And all those 200-something projects are covered 22 cities in Taiwan. And all those projects are coming from the 158 requests from the proposal. And for all the 200-something projects, they are in different kind of topic. For example, the healthcare and mobility, transportation, the governancy, the funding, the retail, and education. All those topics are the needs from the citizens. And we are not just collect this project and we're done. We also try to set out a measurement of those improvements. For example, the smart healthcare. So through this project, we have succeeded to reduce the 90 rural transportation time. Also, we have improved the 85% of accuracy rate in eye disease detection. And tech transportation, for example, we also succeed to reduce the 10% commuting travel time and 40% of parking space finding time. And as I just mentioned, that we don't want to just do it in Taiwan because it's a small country. We also try to do a lot of global connection and business. So we join different international exhibitions. We invite the global delegation coming to Taiwan to experience our service by themselves. We also do many match meetings and webinars, just like what we're doing right now. And because of the COVID-19 that we are not allowed to travel, so this year we are not allowed to invite a delegation coming to Taiwan or going out. So we also conduct a 3D Smart City online exhibition. So via these online exhibitions that our visitor can also join us to experience our service in a different way, so you can have better understanding of our service, then we can arrange the meetings for you. So feel free to visit our online exhibition at www.smartcttw360.com. And once again, really glad that we can work with ICF to organize this webinar, because this is exactly what we want to do. We try to use this as a platform because from our project, we already have many experience and many solutions that we like to share with our international community. But at the same time, we also want to hear from you. We want to learn from your idea, your thoughts, and your opinion. Then we can work together and bring a better life for our citizens. So this is my introduction. Thank you. And over to you, Lou.
Well, thank you, Maggie. That was excellent and very informative. We really appreciate that. So now what I'd like to do is to have a conversation that talks specifically about one area which we're going to be looking at tonight. We're going to try to concentrate on areas of focus. And in this first session, we're going to be talking about how governments respond to citizens' needs. Now, we all know that a government, especially in our democracies, whether it's the federal level, the national level, or the local level, depends entirely on its relationship with the citizens on trust. And to form trust, communication is important. Persistent communication, open communication, honest communication, and the type of communication that is relevant to the experience of citizens in the places that people call home. Now, you would think that would be a simple thing, that communicating with someone is, well, you just talk to them, right? Or you just put an editorial in a newspaper or something on the internet. But it's much more complex than that. Shaping the minds of citizens, making sure that they understand what their community is doing for them, making sure that their government responds to them appropriately, is both science and it is also art. And so I think today we have two people who I can call scientists and artists in this area. And so we're going to be talking with them about how they do it in their respective communities. First up is Mr. Jin Xiaolin. He is the Director for Information Technologies Industry Division in the Industrial Development Bureau in the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Taiwan. That's a pretty long title, but let me tell you what that means. He's the Division Director for Information Technologies Industries. Now, this is the administrative agency of the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Taiwan, and it oversees various industries. And Mr. Director Lin is responsible mainly for the formulation of industrial policies, as well as industrial promotion task forces and offices, which serve as contact windows to the ICT industry. So it's an enormously complex and important job. Under his capacity, he oversees relevant areas in ICT, including telecommunications, information communications, electronics, information equipment, and he is the main lead for matters relevant to 5G industrial development, AI, artificial intelligence, and smart city development. So he has an enormous portfolio, and I want to welcome Director Lin here this morning.
Yeah.
Very good. Ni hao. Joining us from Dublin, Ohio, where the ICF has its first global institute for the study of the intelligent community, is Doug McCulloch. You have probably seen Doug McCulloch if you are a follower of the Intelligent Community Forum, because he has appeared for us on various forums like this, on podcasts, and he speaks around the world on this subject, mainly because of the success he has had in that city of Dublin. His official title is the Chief Information Officer for the city of Dublin, a city of about 45,000 people, where he leads initiatives in IT innovation, digital experience, smart city, broadband, intelligent communities, blockchain, and increasingly, as an innovator, he has a growing reputation for some of this work. And he has really made Dublin, Ohio, a haven for technology-oriented businesses that are interested in the collaboration and opportunities between the smart cities, government sector, and the private sector. So he is really considered an innovator and a leader in this area. But we want to pick his brain tonight, his time in Dublin, Ohio, about how Dublin communicates to its citizens. So that is the agenda for this evening. And Director Lin, I'm going to begin with you. And again, welcome to the forum.
My pleasure.
A very simple question. How does the Taiwanese government and its cities engage citizens and determine what is important to them? Can you just explain to us in sort of general terms?
Okay, thank you. I think this is a good question. And I think compared to central government, I'm in central government, and local government are, more close to its citizen. And so we have to take advantage of that because they understand their systems need better. So IDB, my organization, proactively invite local government and the industry to join, conference, workshop, to discuss how they can work together to address citizens' needs. So through this dialogue platform, the supply side and the demand side, they hammer out, some great solution to solve their citizens' need.
Well, I asked one time of one of your colleagues how you do manage to arrive at such conclusions and communicate, and they said we have a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that sounds very simple, but it is a very, very complex and laborious undertaking. So I'm understanding from you that is really true, that you do pay a lot of attention to each other, you listen, there are a lot of meetings, and then you arrive at conclusions about what citizens want. Which technology platforms or methods are you using, and how did you decide to use those technology platforms and methods?
Yes, you know, yes, compared to the central government, local government lack of resources. They don't have a budget. They don't have talent to deal with such complex things. So the central government step in to help them. We maybe we come to E3. E3 has a lot of talents. They know technology. They know application, and we ask E3 to help local government to shorten the gap between demand and the supply. They don't know technology. Local people don't know technology. So that's a cooperation between central government and local government. So we ask, yes. we just take advantage of the capacity of E3 or III. Then yes, and when the local government they can they have needs, they have their needs, then we can make it become RFP. Then we openly call for proposal. Then the industry can join, then provide their solutions.
Yes. And so, and that model really is one where the central government is quite engaged, quite involved from the top up to try to help the local governments, and the local governments accept it. And then there's the conversation. And as you say, the national government relies on organizations that you mentioned, which people may not know about, but E3 is a significant organization, a think tank. III as well provides policy direction, research, and all kinds of resources. So it's coming from the top down, but then it meets in the middle, as you say, where supply meets demand. Thank you for that, Director Lin. I'm going to now turn to Doug. Doug, that's different than the model a little bit that Dublin, Ohio uses. You aren't going to Washington or necessarily your state capital all of the time for some of the resources when you have a need, are you? Or does it sound familiar to you?
Well, in many ways, it is similar, but you're correct. And just as a reminder to our friends in Taiwan, what you call the central government, we call the federal government. And local governments have far more flexibility, and maybe you could even say resources for their size to be able to take into their own hands performing analyses, communicating with residents, although you did say that the local governments are on the ground communicating really with residents. But we often find that our federal government has inferior funding and does not have much of the flexibility. When it comes to infrastructure, such as broadband and building roads and those kinds of things, they do have superior funds, and we do apply for grants, as we recently did for what we call the Smart Mobility Corridor, which is working on connected and autonomous vehicles in Ohio. And only the federal government could bring the resources to bear there. But when it comes to the technology of running a local government and learning what residents and citizens want, it's true. We local governments do tend to be far more engaged and capable than we would ever expect our state government or our federal government to be.
And Doug, do you believe that local governments acting with some autonomy have a better understanding of the needs of the citizens? Because I know, being an American, there's generally not the level of trust that Dr. Lin probably experiences, and with the central government and the local communities. So, is there something that local governments have or have had to develop in a place like Dublin that is different than what you heard from our friend in Taiwan?
Absolutely. I would say that if you were to study the levels of trust in government in the United States, the federal government enjoys the worst levels of trust. Most people do not trust, and that's probably due to them being farther removed and further away from most people's daily lives, whereas local government has a high level of trust. And again, we're able to meet people on the street and get to know our neighbors and explain things in a way that allows us to enjoy a lot more trust. Now, I must say that when I was in Taiwan, I did see this both at the local government level and the central government level. So it really is different in Taiwan. But also you spoke about ITRI as a research institution. And what I find is I think we use our universities in much the same way as in Taiwan is using ITRI. And we visited some universities while we were there, so I know you use them in similar ways. But our big university in Ohio, for example, is the Ohio State University, and it is the big research institution that we would lean on for technical expertise and those kinds of things, while we focus on comfort, quality of life, and trust with our local population.
Yes, and Dr. Lin, what Doug says is true. They took a survey in the United States. 19% of Americans trust their federal government. 19. That's not very many. But 74% trusted their local government. So I guess the guys who pick up your garbage get your trust, especially if they do it well. But there's probably something more to that. I have to say, though, Director Lin, your example in Taiwan inspired the city manager of the city of Dublin with one idea, which was he wants to use Dublin, Ohio, and its example to create many, many intelligent communities throughout the state of Ohio, which would result in an intelligent Ohio. And thanks to Dublin and the institute there, it has begun to do that. And he admits that he got that idea from Taiwan. I know Taiwan does something similar. And how would you measure, from your position, the success of a city, of an engagement with a city in Taiwan, to the point where you look at the city and you say, this is a successful city. We have worked successfully with them because we can measure this success. Is there a way that you measure?
I think this is a difficult question to answer. Yeah, because overall we have been doing smart city program for 3 years, but we maybe before we would do some it must some piece of only some section of smart city program, but for the past 3 years we sort of full scale smart city. We have full scale smart city programs, and I cannot say we are still on the road on the process to become smart Taiwan. That's the ultimate goal of Taiwan government. Yeah. And we want to do it from local. We want to build we want to local city to be more smarter. Then they consolidate those local cities. Then Taiwan become a smart Taiwan. Yes. And we do a lot of demo site, yes, because we want to I think to see to believe. So we want we held a lot of conference or site touring. We ask local government to send their staff to other cities to see the demo site, to learn from them and learn from each other. We held a lot of a conference to allow local city staff to learn from each other. So that's our approach. Yeah.
Seeing is believing. You see it and you exchange. Of course, when you do that, you also learn about innovations and how to, as we say, harvest them. Now, you guys both know that in intelligent communities, the leadership and the private sector depend on being able to harvest, like food, innovations from its citizens to improve the quality of life, to create a smart city. I'm going to ask you both the same question. I'm going to start with Director Lin. How does Taiwan organize itself in its cities so that people collaborate, share new ideas, start businesses, and do the kinds of things that we know grow the local economies, keep them strong, and keep investments coming in? Is there a method or a program process?
Okay, we came up with a mechanism we called if you want to create business, go home to create your business, because you should go home, go back to your hometown to create a business there.
Right.
Because
right.
Even Taiwan is a small country, but almost every young people go to big cities to have a job there or to create business there. But in rural side, there's only elder people remain. So we want the young people to go back to their hometown. So we create a mechanism to we sort of give them subsidize, give them subsidy, then allow them to build a shop there or start business there. Then we want to sort of we want there's a gap between big city and the rural area, so we want to shorten the gap. Yeah,
that's interesting, because I believe in Taiwan, unlike the United States and other places, the city, the municipality, has a jurisdiction, has responsibility for the countryside as well. So you have that, as I understand it. Is that you're nodding your head? Is that true, or am I making up something? That's not true.
Yes. But as I said before, the local government, with the metropolitan is we will call them local government, but they are short. They are short of resources to take care of rural area. Then the central government step in. Yeah.
Sure. Now, I just want to understand this program about going home. When somebody says go home, to me it means get out of here. I don't want you anymore. But it's different in Taiwan, right? It's not take a hike, pal. It's go home and do well. Okay. But when you're subsidizing someone to return to their village, say they're leaving Taichung or they're leaving Taoyuan or the bigger cities to go back to the village, these beautiful villages there, do they have to have an idea for the business first? Do they have to present a business plan, or do they go back and do that?
They have to present a business plan. Then we have some experts from venture capital and industry to review, and professors to review their plan. Then if we think its plan is workable, we will give them some money funding. We will give funding to them. Yeah, they can start it in there. Yeah.
Doug, I live in New York City now, as you know, but I grew up in a very small town that, as Director Lin was describing, really sort of ran out of gas. All the young people left, and the elderly were left behind, or the unskilled. And I'll tell you, I would have been very happy if I could have gone to Mr. Lin and said, I've got an idea to go back home. and I want to start a business and stay there with my parents and my cousins and my family and bring my wife there and so forth. But nothing like that existed. First question, before you talk about how Dublin does it, what do you think of this idea that you just heard?
I think it's a wonderful idea. And we have similar thoughts where that's concerned. We do have a program to get young people to return to the Midwest of the United States and to return to Ohio. Our economic development department has a program called a Reality Check. It's called the Dublin Reality Check. And we have advertised in places like the West Coast of Silicon Valley and the East Coast, where you're from, Lou, in New York. And we have targeted social media ads in those places to say, for how much you are paying for a studio apartment, you could have a very large, beautiful home in Dublin, Ohio. And it has been quite successful in trying to attract young people back. It's a similar concept. Another thing that we are doing in Ohio is, I think it's called Choose Ohio First, but we attract, because of our great universities in Ohio, a lot of young people from around the country, or people who are from Central Ohio. They will stay in Ohio in order to go to college, and then they immediately leave. So what we are trying to do is retain them, because it's a lot easier to convince people to stay than it is to try and get them back after they've left and gone to a big city. So we do try to attract people with essentially how much rent costs in bigger cities. And a lot of people are returning home thanks to those costs.
Sure. But having cheap real estate, right, is a good starter. But eventually, as your place becomes successful, that cost goes up. I mean, we see these experiences everywhere. The question that I asked Mr. Lin was, how do you then harvest the innovations and the talent when it stays in Dublin so that it continues to stay there, so that people continue to collaborate, you continue to grow businesses, because Dublin has more, I think, or did at one point have more Fortune 1000 companies on a per capita basis than any city in the United States. That just didn't happen by luck. You must have had a program and used certain technology to make that happen, didn't you?
Well, yes. So some members of the audience who will have watched some of what we just completed with the Global Summit, the ICF Global Summit, will have seen some of the information about the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. And so from a pure economic standpoint, it is more cost effective to help to grow a very small business of 2 or 3 people and hold it here in Central Ohio than it is to try to attract a headquarters like Apple or Amazon to come and locate in where you are. And so small businesses grow and they become very large businesses. And so if we can leverage the expertise from some of the Fortune 1000 companies that are here, for example, in healthcare or in health analytics, to grow new businesses, because the talent that had been in those businesses move on, then we can grow new Fortune 1000 businesses, and we've recognized that. We're big believers in the triple helix, in taking research institutions like a big university, government, especially a local government, and private industry to create innovation and harvest it. And we've imported a lot of good venture capital and funding and financing that gives the fuel to these younger businesses to be able to stay. One thing that we found we're very good at is, once a company founds in Dublin, Ohio, it is very unlikely that they're going to leave Dublin to go to New York or Washington, D.C. or Atlanta or Chicago. They're going to stay in Dublin because the talent is available.
Yeah. And it just happens to be a great place to live. Increasingly, your quality of life is good. Director Lin, does that sound like something that is happening in the small towns as your citizens and entrepreneurs go home? Does that sound familiar, or is something else happening in those places? Do you have any results that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think we trace back Yeah, I think we have doing this for this is the second year, and we trace back the last year's successful story, and we found that six six program had still continuing. So I will think, but it take time to grow
Yes.
to a bigger business. So I think it's a good start. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a good start. Yes.
I think it is too, and it's something that we've been encouraging smaller communities to do for almost 20 years, and one of the reasons is sheer demographics. I mean, every time we go to the United Nations or we talk to demographers around the world, they say that by the year 2050, 70% of the world's population is going to live in a city. I mean, that's the projection. And I then ask people, leaders, like yourselves and others, is that sustainable? Can the human rate, can the human species sustain that many people in the city and that few people in the countryside? It's like taking air from one lung and just filling up the other until it can't function anymore. And everybody says the same thing. No, it's not sustainable. We should find a better way to create the balance. And it sounds to me like both of you have sort of embraced that idea. And I think that's a really good thing, because if our intelligent communities can lead this movement back home, then we've really got something that's unique. And so we are beginning to see that. So people who are listening out there, these are what the leading communities in the world are doing to make that phenomenon happen. If the United Nations is listening, you should go to Taiwan, you should come to Ohio, and you can see the future. Something else that's unique, Director Lin, is some of the smart city technologies and infrastructure that Taiwan has. I find that their approach is very creative in terms of how they develop their technologies and the ones that are produced. And we're going to be listening to a lot of those over the next couple of webinars. We're going to have one on healthcare coming up as well. Is there a unique way that you incentivize companies to develop, say, smart city technologies? Do you have a specific type of education or infrastructure that allows these types of businesses to grow? Is there something that we should learn there?
Okay. Let me try to. When you want to build a smart city, the first thing is to have good infrastructure. So in the past, we have gone through several stages. The first is Taiwan. We want Taiwan. We want Taiwan to sort of from traditional industry to digitize industry. So we call it that stage. We call it the Taiwan stage. Then we have Taiwan. So we want Taiwan to be able to take advantage of mobile, technology. So we have a stage called Taiwan. Then we have Smart Taiwan, and I think there's a lot of conference happening in Taiwan, all year long, So we spend a lot of time on educating the industry and the citizens. So I think because Taiwan is quite small, so you want to convey information is more easier than in the States, in the United States, So we actually there's a lot of conference,
Yeah.
All year long. Yeah.
and a lot of education too, and
Yes.
that's really what goes on at those conferences. And by the way, Taiwan is small. The United States is big, but every human being has the same size brain. It's about 2 pounds. So it's a question. It's really a question, Doug, of how you use it. And we're going to talk about this a little bit. Taiwan has been very effective at combating the pandemic, for example. The United States has not been so successful. So big country does not do well. Small country does well. Let's talk about that a little bit with regard to citizen communication, relationship to government. Can you describe, Doug, your basic strategy for citizen engagement during the pandemic? First of all, how are you doing managing it? And then what is the process for engaging your citizens during this really dangerous time?
Yes, we do rely a bit more heavily than we'd like to on social media, not just to communicate with people, although something like Twitter or Nextdoor or some of these platforms are good for getting a message out. But we actually use social media to measure the response or the reactions that we're getting. So when a government puts a message out and people react negatively, you can measure that. And I think that one of the things we're trying to do, we use a platform called Zen City, and it actually measures sentiment with regard to a particular thing. So when we closed schools, we're able to see how people are feeling about that. When we canceled our 4th of July celebration, which in Taiwan, you may or may not know, is a very big patriotic celebration in the United States, and it had to be postponed or canceled with parades and all sorts of things. We measured sentiment with regard to that. So by doing that, it has allowed us to more finely tune our messaging and figure out where are we not communicating well. We have attempted to do the kind of meetings and communications with people, but not being able to do that in person, it is not as effective over video conferencing. But we've been doing our best, and we've learned a lot over the last 9 to 11 months, but we still have much, much, much more to learn. But we feel like analyzing and measuring sentiment has done more for us to be able to recraft our messaging to the public, because we don't want to make people angry, and we want to be responsive to people who are fearful. It's a very delicate line to walk.
But essentially, you're talking about the Zen City platform. It's measuring emotion. It's measuring the way people feel about a certain policy the government has or a direction that you guys are taking. Can you give us an example of how that works, how that's measured? I'm angry at the government because they're making me wear masks. Well, I know, as a doctor, my doctor would tell me I have to wear a mask, but I'm angry because somehow it inhibits my freedom. At least that's some of the ideas that are being persistent here in the United States. How would your platform measure that and then enable people to do the right thing? Is there a way?
So it's pretty interesting. You can measure sentiment even if you are not the ones putting the message out. So if people are angry about wearing masks, and we did experience this, you can see how people feel about certain words or certain descriptions or certain arguments for why you should or should not wear a mask. And then you can choose not to wade into that territory. One of the things that the city of Dublin actually did is we recognized that the photographs and the video that we typically show on our digital properties was showing people without masks, walking around and enjoying themselves. So they actually went out and refilmed people sitting at restaurants, enjoying themselves with masks on, people walking around and trying to change, again, as you say, that emotional response without hitting people over the head with a mandate and saying you must do this or that, but rather saying, how can we improve our quality of life? And we did that without words. We did it with images. And we actually found that to be a lot more effective than telling people what they must or must not do.
Director Lin, you're listening very closely to what Doug is saying. I could tell. Yeah. Now, Taiwan by everybody's standard, has managed COVID brilliantly. I mean, when we talk about that in the United States, we say, how come we can't do it like Taiwan? How does Taiwan do it is literally what we say. Two questions for you. The first one is, does what Doug say make sense to you? Do you measure community sentiment during a time like this? And secondly, what has been the number one lesson that you have learned in Taiwan with regard to managing a pandemic?
Okay, the first question, to answer the first question, my answer is that we have a lot of media, press, so actually, if someone has complained about the government, they go to the media. Then, because there are a lot of media, so we have to, when we listen to the media, we listen to the press. So a lot of information were every day. So, and we have to take care of that. So we know the sentiment. That's because Taiwan have a strong, very, very strong media industry. So that's I think that to some extent I don't think that's a good phenomena, but that's the reality. But so we have to, we have to deal with them. With this situation, so I don't think there is very transparency in Taiwan, because of the media, we have strong media. So the first that's the to answer your first question, and the second question is
the lesson that you learned, the big lesson that you learned managing the pandemic, communicating with citizens, making it so successful.
I think there's a cultural difference between Taiwan and the Western countries, because we tend in the East we tend to follow the rules, but in the you advocate in the state, you advocate, freedom of speech, freedom of something, So when the governor asks the citizens to put on their mask, 99% of Taiwanese will put on their mask. Only so you only have to deal with the 1%. So there's a lot of people in the train station, in the MRT station. They ask the 1% to put on their mask.
Peer pressure.
Yes, so that's not the hard work, But still, some people want, like in the States, they don't want to put on their mask. So I think that's a cultural difference between the East and the West. That's
Yeah, Lou, if I could
go ahead,
respond to that as well.
Please.
I noticed that as well. When I went to Taiwan, I was there in February. It was right around a very scary time, and I was made to feel very comfortable that what was happening in the country was going to keep me safe. And I was a guest, of course, so I did everything that we were told. It was extremely efficient, the amount of sanitizing, mask wearing, social distancing that was done, and it was normalized so that it did not feel like it was constraining. Another lesson that we have learned in the United States, I think, because we are so much larger, we have a lot more rural areas, not more rural areas, but wider rural areas. And I think at one point we tried to apply a single policy to both very densely packed urban areas that needed certain things at that time, as well as urban areas where people really did not need to practice the same social distancing because they didn't have the same kind of contact with people. They didn't ride trains or buses or anything like that. So I think, and it's too late now, we've already upset everybody, but Taiwan, I think, was able to get the virus under control so that people could get back to normal a lot quicker. And then when they had a flare up, They went back to those protocols and it flared back down again. And everybody understands that. And I think that's one reason why they're successful. But I must agree with Director Lin. Culturally in the United States, we tend to say no whenever we're told to do something or even ask something. So it makes it difficult. The virus has run through us because of that cultural difference, I think.
Yeah, sometimes your greatest strengths are your greatest weaknesses. And, we like being bad boys in the United States, so it helps us on one area to be creative, to think outside the box. But in a time like this, it really gets us in trouble. And as Director Lin said, being obedient, trusting the government is saving a lot of lives. Gentlemen, we've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to give you each a minute and ask you the same question. Doug, if you could export one innovation that was developed in Dublin, Ohio, to Taiwan, what would be your best thing to bring across to the East?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer to it, but I would say maybe the way we develop relationships. It doesn't sound like an innovation. And in Taiwan, they do a wonderful job with relationships, but it's a strength that we have in developing relationships between our companies, our universities, and our government. I think Taiwan already does a really great job at it. And I'd really rather import many things from there because I learned so much while I was there. But I think that's something that if I were to go to Taiwan and try to be successful, I would bring that particular skill because I think it would be effective, especially in their environment, which is ripe for innovations.
Very good. Director Lin, last word to you. What would you like to export, either culturally or through information technology or anything, to Dublin, Ohio, and that part of the world?
Okay, actually, I think we tend to learn from the United States rather than to give advice to to you because actually
we'll take it though. We'll take the advice.
Okay, so but because what I learned from this smart city program is we have to do it in the past we do it in supply just focus on supply side, but now we shift to another way that is focused on demand. So we spend a lot of time figuring out what demand the local system, local government need. Yeah, right. They need that. So I think the demand driven is what. But I think in the United States you have done a great job. Demand driven. But with this is we should learn from you. Yeah.
Well, I think you've improvised and innovated on the idea of citizen demand, and I think that's a new way to think about how to run a community and to build the types of quality of life that we're looking for. So I think all the intelligent communities and communities everywhere are looking at Taiwan for things like that. And the good news is, gentlemen, as we close this, that we're beginning to find out through the work that's being done through the Intelligent Community Institute, where Doug is, and through ICF Taiwan, where you are, Director Lin, that it isn't the big cities anymore that are coming up with the innovations and the ideas exclusively. It's every place. It's a place that develops itself into a smart city and then an intelligent community that is going to be feeding the demand of the world going forward and creating the kind of world that you and I both want to see. So on that, I'm going to thank you so much, Director Jin Xiaolin, for being with us today. I was going to say Director Doug McCulloch. You're kind of like a director. You're the CIO there, but you're directing a lot of good activity there. And I thank you again for making the time this evening from Ohio to be with us. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is the first session of our Smart City Virtual Roundtable. How does Taiwan do it? I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I'd like to thank everyone involved with this program and give a special thanks to the ICF Taiwan organization and their supporting organizations in Taiwan. On behalf of the Intelligent Community Forum and our founders and our 200 cities around the world, I'm Louis Zacharilla. I'd like to wish you a good night or a good morning, a good day, wherever you are. And no matter where you are, remember this one thing, because it's true. There really is no place like home. Take care, everybody.